Good evening, everyone. This is Lindsay Kabatsky, the Government Affairs Coordinator at National PTA. We'll give it one more minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started with tonight's presentation. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, this is Lindsay Kabatsky at National PTA. I'm the Government Affairs Coordinator at National PTA. And joining me is Shannon Sevier, the Vice President of Advocacy and the Chair of the Legislative Committee at National PTA. And she's going to go ahead and get us started with tonight's presentation. Shannon?
Thanks, Lindsay. Thank you so much, everyone else, for being on the call. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your investment in PTA and the fact that you're prepping yourself for this very important week we're going to spend together in March. Joining me is Josh Westfall, the Government Affairs Manager at National PTA. And we're going to go ahead and go through the 2016 National PTA Public Policy Agenda with you. So that you are primed and ready to hit the ground running when you see us in DC in March. This webinar is part 3 of a 4-part series leading up to the legislative conference. The 4th one will be held on establishing Hill visits and advocating on behalf of the agenda. If you missed any of the cycles before this, please remember that the webinar our previous webinars can be accessed on our webpage. As you all know, PTA has a long history of being effective advocates for all children and their families. Founded in 1897, PTA is the oldest and largest volunteer child advocacy association in the United States. It's important to remember that. It's important to embrace that and own that as we go into this process. Since our inception, we have worked side by side with policymakers at every level to improve the lives of our nation's children. That was never more apparent than the passage of ESSA just a few months ago. In this webinar, we'll outline PTA's public policy priorities for 2016. There will be time for question and answers at the at the close of the slides. The National PTA Public Policy Agenda is a document that we release annually. It outlines National PTA's federal policy priorities for the year. The agenda is developed through National PTA's existing position statements, resolutions, and timeliness of legislative priorities in Congress. So in other words, if there's a certain issue that's being voted upon or it's about to move and get some traction, if that is in line with our public policy, with our resolutions and our position statements, we will take that issue up and run with it and try and strike while the iron's hot. The public policy agenda is developed by the Legislative Committee and Government Affairs staff, and then it's approved by National PTA's president and by vote through the Board of Directors. It's organized into 9 parts, with each section focusing on how family engagement plays an important role in that issue area. You'll notice that the way that we've pillared family engagement into each of the 9 sections is a fairly new concept. It dovetails very nicely with what we're asking in a very broad sense of American families, and from our Senate and our House of Representatives, we would like to have funding for family engagement. And on that note, I hope that everyone saw their action alert and that they took action tonight and that they shared the alert with their friends. Wink, wink, smile, smile. But in order to highlight what it looks like on the ground, we folded family engagement into those 9 areas. So what are the 9 areas? We've got elementary and secondary education, early learning and childhood education, which has really kind of seen an uptick in funding and prominence under the Obama administration, special education, federal investments in education, juvenile justice and delinquency prevention. I know we'd really like to see some movement in that area, child health and safety, gun safety and violence prevention, technology and student data privacy, and finally, post-secondary access and opportunity. Also an issue that's got quite a lot of traction right now with the incumbents and candidates for office. But before we discuss what National PTA's priorities are in each of these issue areas, Josh is going to take the helm and discuss PTA's #1 legislative priority for 2016.
Thanks, Shannon. So this year, PTA's #1 legislative priority, as shown on your screen, is for Congress to fund statewide family engagement centers at a robust level for fiscal year 2017. That robust level should not be less than what it is authorized in the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is $10 million. So at a bare minimum, we are asking for at least $10 million to fund statewide family engagement centers. Of course, if they give us more, we're always happy. And this priority will lead us through LegCon. It will be our main ask at LegCon in March during our Hill Days, and we will be continuing this ask throughout the spring and summer months. Last year, PTA advocates from across the nation successfully advocated for statewide family engagement centers to be included in the reauthorization of the SEA, which is now called the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. Now that the statewide family engagement centers competitive grant program was authorized in ESSA, our next priority is to adequately fund these family engagement centers for fiscal year 2017 and beyond. So right now you might be asking yourself, why is funding these statewide family engagement centers important? How does it affect me? Well, the statewide family engagement centers is a competitive grant program, and it's an improved version of the Parental Information and Resource Centers, or PERCS program, that was part of No Child Left Behind. Some of you that have been in PTA for a while have heard about this program and have advocated for this program in older Congresses, but now it's an improved version called the Statewide Family Engagement Centers. And these centers focus on much-needed technical assistance in partnership development for states and school districts to better support schools and educators in engaging the families. This engagement will further academic and developmental progress for our nation's children and drive increases in student achievement and other positive outcomes. So on your screen you also see we have some quick facts in yellow on the bottom right, and that will go throughout the slide. So for over 40 years, research shows that no matter a family's income or socioeconomic status, students with engaged families usually have these outcomes. They attend school more regularly, they earn better grades, they enroll in more challenging academic programs, and have higher graduation rates. So supporting family engagement is of great value to all parents and families, especially those who struggled in school or failed to graduate from high school themselves. Family engagement is an essential component of breaking that cycle for the next generation. I mean, this is why we are PTA members. This is why we work for the PTA, volunteer for the PTA. And despite bipartisan support for this program, the President's proposed budget does not include funding for statewide family engagement centers. Thus, National PTA is urging members of Congress to fund the program at no less than its authorized level of $10 million. We hope to build on our over 100 years of successful advocacy efforts to ensure that family engagement is prioritized in education, and to ensure that families are equal partners in education. Even though this is National PTA's #1 priority, we advocate on many other issues to improve the health, safety, and education and well-being of all children and their families. And now we will turn to start discussing those other issues.
before we do that, I just want to let that sink in. Thank you, Josh, for pointing out the links between family engagement and school attendance, retention, and degree acquisition. I want all of you to know that not only do we recognize the worth of family engagement as we move through our communities and our schools and we promote that tenet, but there are schools and organizations and associations outside of the United States that see this PTA model as a very effective model. In April, we've been invited to go speak to the Alberta Council of Schools up in Canada to talk about the connections between family engagement and overall student success, and to talk about how family engagement can improve and support the overall academic trajectory of every child in the school. The more engagement that you have, you're not just helping your own child, but you're helping that school climate and that school community. So I want that to sink in. I want you guys to pat yourself on the back and rest assured that we are taking the right steps and we're investing in the right things. So moving forward past that pillar of family engagement, let's look at what else we'll be doing and how we'll be involving ourselves in different political and policy issues. First, we're advocating for all levels of government to invest more in evidence-based family engagement strategies and programs to support students, families, teachers, and schools to become better partners in educating our nation's children. Now, if you want a model for that, or if you want to put your finger on something and say, well, what would be something that would be an evidence-based family engagement strategy? Schools of Excellence is all about evidence-based engagement strategies. I encourage all of you to go to the website, pta.org, and look at what we're doing in terms of the School of Excellence program, and to see if you can't get one started in your district if you're not already doing that. In the newly reauthorized ESCA, which is ESSA, LEAs must reserve at least 1% of Title I funds for family engagement activities. PTA members nationwide successfully advocated for local education agencies for the option to reserve more than 1% of Title I funds for family engagement activities and programs. So they need to reserve at least 1%, but we're hoping to see a little bit more set aside. We also support and advocate for accountability systems that provide for multiple measures of student growth. A single test does not accurately portray the amount of growth or learning a student has gained, nor is this an equitable way to assess how teachers and schools are performing. Multiple measures of student achievement is needed to gain reliable information on where students are in the developmental process. Without benchmarking student progress, there's really no hope of effective remediation, effective supports, or of effective bolstering to the next level. In addition to, or furthermore, whether you're a child from rural Arkansas or the inner city of Boston, you should have access to well-prepared and adequately certified teachers. No matter your background, race, or geographic location, every student has the right to a high-quality education taught by certified teachers. So this is a really heavy statement because it involves a lot. It involves funding, it involves teacher prep, it involves continuing teacher education, along with curriculum and training supports. National PTA supports increasing opportunities and investments for teachers to get the necessary training and credentials to teach our nation's youth. As an aside, I just ran a report on program tuition rates across the country. For those of you that don't know, I work at my alma mater. I work at a law school, and we compared law programs against a Master's of English programs and PhD programs, MBAs, and MPAs. And I have to tell you, I added in Master's in Education or a Master's in Teaching. Since I was running the numbers, I just wanted to see the difference. And right now, to get a Master's of Arts in Teaching, that degree is valued at about 50% of the MBA. So that's a cultural issue with America that I hope over time we change. But I think just to frame it and to provide a synopsis or a point of view for America, we definitely need to do more with our teachers and raise them up. Lastly, we urge policymakers not to divert any funds for public education to private schools. Not to divert any funds for public education to private schools in the form of vouchers, scholarships, or tax incentives. Instead of providing public funds to a select few, we support investing more in public education to improve the educational outcomes of all students. My students go to public schools. They always have. I'm proud of the schools that they are in, and I invest in the schools that they are in. That being said, Josh, what can you tell us about what National PTA advocates for on behalf of our nation's earliest learners?
Thanks, Shannon. So I'm going to cover the early learning and childhood education. National PTA has always been a leader on expanding opportunities for early childhood education. In fact, our association was instrumental in getting mandatory kindergarten classes implemented in schools. We continue our long history of advocating for early childhood learning programs by urging policymakers to do a few things. One is to expand family engagement initiatives that begin at birth, in the home, and other early learning environments, to ensure coordinated family engagement throughout childhood. We want to improve the availability of high-quality early care and education opportunities for infants and toddlers through programs such as the Early Head Start program and other child care programs. Currently, the United States ranks 32nd out of 39 countries. Once again, when you look at statistics and we think of the U.S. as a dynamite country all over other countries, when you look at 32 out of a total of 39 countries, we're lacking in the enrollment rates for 3-year-olds in early childhood education. We want to extend and expand the maternal, infant, and early child home visiting program to increase access to evidence-based home visiting services that provides parents of infants and toddlers with the knowledge, skills, and resources related to child health and development. Furthermore, we'd like to increase access to high-quality public pre-kindergarten for all students to prepare them for successful kindergarten entry. In the 2013 to 2014 school year, only 4% of 3-year-olds were in state-funded pre-K programs. And that fact is, again, located on your screen. Only 4%. And we want to encourage local school districts to use Title I resources from ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, to support high-quality early childhood education programs for eligible children from ages 0 to 5. Without the proper resources and access to early childhood education programs, our nation's youth can be falling behind before they even begin school. In order to stay competitive in the global economy, we must inform policymakers that education starts at birth and urge them to provide more resources to families early on. And now I will turn this over to Shannon to discuss students with disabilities.
Thanks so much, Josh. As a lot of you know, IDEA has not been reauthorized for quite some time. And Josh, is it funded at 40% right now, with states having to make up the excess?
So it's actually always the goal for the government was to cover 40% of the cost of IDEA for all states. Currently, it's only covering 16%. So, and this has been happening since the creation of IDEA, that the federal government has not been covering their end, which means states have to invest more and more, or sometimes they tend not to.
Yeah, thank you so much for providing that statistic to us, because I want you folks to get off the call and be a little upset about that. I want you to think about what message that sends, that a package was passed to support and shepherd our special needs children through IDEA, and not only is it not fully funded, On paper, it's funded at 40%, but in actuality, it's been funded at 16%. That's a travesty. That is a travesty, and I can't wait to take this on. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is the main federal program authorizing state and local aid for special education and related services for children with disabilities. IDEA requires states to provide a free and appropriate public education. If you folks have heard the acronym FAPE, that's free and appropriate public education to children with disabilities in the least restrictive environment. However, there is not a statutory definition of family engagement in this law. In addition, there are no standards for models of family and school partnerships. Students with disabilities have a 20% lower graduation rate than the national average. Therefore, National PTA urges policymakers to include and codify a statutory definition of family engagement in education in IDEA. 2. Incorporate PTA's national standards for family school partnerships as a best practice model for family engagement in special education. 3. Ensure every student with a disability receives quality instruction from teachers and specialized instructional support personnel who have, at a minimum, successfully completed state licensure or certification processes. 4. Require the inclusion of a classroom-based behavioral management plan during the development of every student's IEP and 504B plan. Now, if you folks don't know the difference between an IEP and a 504, they stem from different pieces of legislation, and they affect change in different areas, and they trigger different behaviors on behalf of the school district and the school. And where can you find information on these distinctions and how to navigate the system? Well, the advocacy toolkit, of course. Getting back to the slide, I just want you folks to know if you have more questions on that, we'll be happy to answer them, but you can also access the advocacy toolkit. So, in including classroom-based behavioral management during the development of the student's IEP or 504B plan, we hope to ensure that both general and special education teachers know how to respond to behavioral problems with evidence-based, multi-tiered systems of support, including positive behavioral interventions and supports. Do you folks remember the position statement that we passed last year? If you need a copy of that, we can send it to you. But it's a very important issue that's trending right now in our schools. As you see an uptick in inclusion, sometimes you see an uptick in lack of skills in handling behavior management and positive discipline techniques. The 5th item, amend IDEA to require transition planning services for special education students to begin no later than the age of 14. This is an early intervention piece and encourage school districts to employ transition planning coordinators to assist in the facilitation of transition planning services for special education students and their families. What happens around the age of 14? Our children, our youth migrate from the crazy but relatively safe walls of middle school into the big water, into high school. And many times their IEP or their 504 is not transitioned. Family engagement does not continue into the high school years. We need that to happen. Students with disabilities have long been a marginalized group in education. We're making progress to ensure that all students are receiving an equal and quality education, but more can be done to improve the situations of millions of students. Now, Josh, with the release of the President's proposed budget last week, what ways are National PTA advocating for education funding in the fiscal year 17?
That's a great question, Shannon. As Shannon just noted, the President did release his budget last week on February 9th. And overall, the budget, we received an increase in education spending of about 2%, which sounds fantastic to hear that we have increased money for education. But budgets and appropriations in general are very convoluted of where the money's coming from and how exactly it works. So what I plan to do is on this section is to explain the specific programs that the National PTA focuses our advocacy efforts on, which will then help all of us on the webinar and in the future work through the President's budget requests in the future and appropriations processes so that we know exactly what programs we're looking at and which ones we should kind of narrow in on over other ones. But first, let me set the landscape for investments in education over the last few years. So, despite nearly universal agreement from policymakers on the importance of high-quality education for all children, federal funding for public education programs has experienced dramatic cuts over the past several years due to the automatic budget cuts known as sequestration. In general, we're looking at funding education numbers that are below fiscal year 2010. So we're 6 years behind the 8 ball on education spending. An example of this is for Title I funding in schools, we are currently underfunding Title I by $20.5 billion. And that number is based on the need for funding in Title I schools and how much is actually being funded. So we're underfunded by $20.5 billion. And also going back to the IDEA part as well, again, we're only financing 16% of special education programs when we originally promised 40. But not to get too far or give too much bad news, there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are things to be happy about, support, advocate for, especially in the last couple of years. We have seen increases in some of our programs in some different areas of the education budget because it is convoluted. Some succeed, some don't, some get cut. So that's what we're going to go over, and that's where I'm going to turn to now, are these programs. So again, like we talked about earlier, our main goal is to have adequate funding appropriated for statewide family engagement centers, which is a competitive grant program. But in addition to worrying about statewide family engagement centers, PTA is urging policymakers to replace sequestration with a balanced approach to deficit reduction that does not include further cuts to education. So again, in the sequestration thing that we talk about in budget caps, Congress a few years ago did pass a law that we can't go over certain amounts and we have to start balancing the budget more. And because of that area, this has allowed increases in certain areas of the budget that are non-education related, which has then affected other areas of the budget, such as education, to not receive many increases or small increases in general. So we advocate with the Committee for Education Funding and a lot of education groups to find a balanced approach to deficit reduction that will follow these rules but not cut investments to education and opportunities for children. We also want to support increased funding for disadvantaged populations. This is, for example, Title I programs and ESSA and other programs that serve at-risk students. We'd like to fully fund programs authorized by IDEA and finally give IDEA the fair shake that it deserves. That supports the academic and developmental outcomes for children with disabilities. A key program in IDEA is the Parent Training and Information Centers. And this is similar to our family engagement centers and what we push for of involving families into the student's education and their child's education, because these centers provide information and resources to parents and students with disabilities about the special education laws and what schools need to provide and offer to them. We also want to increase investments in quality early learning programs, which is something that we just got done discussing. Some of these programs are the Early Head Start in general, the Child Care and Development Block Grant, and the Maternal Infant and Early Childhood Home Visiting Program. And we'd like to invest in ESEA programs that provide well-rounded educational opportunities and improve students' safety and health. And again, the National PTA does take an active role with the Committee for Education Funding with 125 other organizations to advocate for investments in public education. And that's, if you look at our website under letters to policymakers and things that we support, you'll often see letters from that coalition in general, because it's really organizations nationwide all coming together to tell Congress we need to invest in education. So again, investing in education is imperative for our nation's future to make sure that the next generation of students receive the proper training and skills to compete in the 21st century workforce and to continue to grow our economy. Now we'll turn to Shannon to discuss juvenile justice and delinquency prevention at the federal level.
Yes, JJDPA. Let's get to it. National PTA has a long history of advocating for policies to prevent youth from entering the juvenile justice system and protecting youth currently in the system. In fact, in 1899, National PTA passed a resolution that called for nationwide juvenile court and probation systems in order to protect children from being incarcerated with adults. Seems crazy right now, but PTA actually had to step up and make that a cause and get that pushed through by 1925. As a result of the efforts of PTA members and other child advocates, all but 2 states had a separate juvenile court system. Juvenile justice and delinquency prevention is still a cornerstone of our advocacy efforts. On that note, National PTA urges policymakers to encourage states and communities to include evidence-based family engagement strategies in juvenile justice and delinquency prevention programs. So that's remediation, that's not punishment, that's involving the family in the issue with the youth, not just isolating the behaviors and then addressing those independent incidences alone. Provide incentives to states to prohibit the detention of children for status offenses. So what are status offenses? Curfew, truancy, running away. Should we incarcerate youth? Should we detain them because they didn't attend school? So let's thread that out. They're not attending school, so they're not getting instructional time. But what's the real reason they're not attending school? Well, some don't attend school because some don't attend school. Others don't attend school because they're caring for their younger siblings. Others don't attend school because they're homeless and they don't have a means of transportation to get to school. These are the things that we need to thread out if we're really going to make a difference in those children's lives, and if we're really going to reshape thinking around juvenile justice. We need to promote community-based, school-based, and family-focused interventions. Each year, juvenile courts handle roughly 1.2 million cases. More needs to be done to reduce this endemic. I know that last year, when talks were swirling around the House, and some Republicans were calling to completely defund JJDPA. A Senate member of the Republican Party stepped in. He was on a committee and was well informed and said, do you folks realize, we're in the same party, do you folks realize that if we defund JJDPA, we'll only be spending twice, 3 times, or 4 times that amount in our prisons? And to what end? And so I want you folks to feel the effect of that and realize how important these interventions are. We'd like to reauthorize the Second Chance Act to help provide necessary resources to support youth re-entry into their schools and communities. We would like to prohibit children under 18 years of age who are detained pre-trial from being incarcerated with adults. So this is in our jails, not our prisons, but our jails. They're often referred to as sight and sound separation. Require states to take concrete steps to reduce racial and ethnic disparities through systemic improvements at all contact points within the juvenile justice system continuum. What does that mean? It means that we're marginalizing our minority populations and that they represent a larger pool of JJD or juvenile justice offenders. We would like to promote programs that encourage the use of evidence-based, multi-tiered behavioral frameworks. Are you guys starting to get the trend here? Evidence-based, multi-tiered behavioral frameworks. We're using this approach with more than one population because it works. So what are those frameworks? Positive behavioral interventions and supports, instead of zero-tolerance policies that promote exclusionary discipline practices. Juvenile justice reform is just one way that PTA, national PTA, and you will advocate on behalf of children to keep them safe, to help them navigate life and become the best versions of themselves. And to that end, Josh, can you discuss other ways that national PTA advocates for better health and safety policies at the federal level?
Yes, I can. So the National PTA continues to be a strong advocate for healthy foods in schools in supporting initiatives such as the National School Lunch Program and the School Breakfast Program. And we also support improved nutrition standards for school meals. PTA supports family engagement in the creation and implementation of local school wellness policies that address student nutrition and physical activity. National PTA promotes overall health and wellness through First Lady Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign and by advocating for federal policies that define well-rounded education to include physical education and comprehensive health education. However, students are still at risk of an unhealthy lifestyle and dangerous school environments. Nearly 1 out of 4 students report being bullied during the school year, and this number only increases when students are LGBTQ or other areas of individuals that get marginalized. So how do we improve the health and safety of children? So National PTA urges policymakers to support and invest in programs that provide for a child's health and wellness, including mental health, as they progress through each stage of development into adulthood. We advocate to improve access to and provide funding for qualified school-based health and wellness practitioners, such as school nurses, school counselors, school psychologists, school social workers, and other specialized instructional support personnel. Strengthening and improving child nutrition standards, guidelines, and programs through the authorization of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act. So again, that's something else that we work on a lot, and that's one of the main programs that have had a lot of improvements over the years for children's health in school, and it currently is still going through the Senate and working its way through that process. And we provide technical assistance and resources for schools that are not meeting the nutrition standards. So the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act not only works on student nutrition, but also helps with the technical side of things and the training that school professionals need to serve healthy lunches. We support dedicated federal funding through targeted grants and a loan assistance program for school kitchen infrastructure and equipment improvements. National PTA promotes policies to inform the general public about the risks and costs of bullying for all children and ways to address and prevent and eliminate bullying behavior. We require public schools to enact policies to address all types of bullying, both in and out of school, as defined by the Center for Disease Control, and for states to collect and report on bullying incidents and the school's response to those incidents. If students are not healthy or if they do not feel safe at school, their opportunity to reach their full potential diminishes. National PTA will continue to work towards ensuring all students feel safe and healthy, both inside and outside of the school building. Part of that effort relates to our work towards reducing gun violence in our communities, and Shannon can expand upon our policies on gun safety and violence prevention.
That was a great segue, Josh, because every student does deserve to feel safe in their community, safe in their home, and safe in their school. How can they actualize and be the best version of themselves? How can they form those bonds? How can they take risks if at a fundamental level they don't feel safe? That being said, I want you folks to know that gun violence is the second leading cause of death for young people, only behind motor vehicle accidents. That's staggering. How much progress have we made since Sandy Hook? I don't know that we have. An estimated 46 million American children will be affected by violence, crime, abuse, or psychological trauma in a given year as well. Have you folks heard of urban post-traumatic stress syndrome? Do you realize that our youth in our inner cities that are exposed to a higher level of gun violence are exhibiting the same symptoms and tendencies that our soldiers exhibit when they come back from combat? This is something that needs our attention now. So what are we going to do about it as PTA? Well, first, we need to promote education initiatives that raise public awareness of firearm safety and gun violence prevention strategies, including safe gun storage programs. We need to support legislation requiring a waiting period and comprehensive background checks prior to buying a firearm for purchase from licensed and unlicensed dealers. So it doesn't matter if it's a gun show. You know, that's that little caveat that was just highlighted when Obama passed his new language and presented it to all of us for consideration. If I am not a brick and mortar gun dealer, but I make my money selling guns on the internet or at trade shows, should not the same rules apply to me? Food for thought, something to consider. And we've had a stand on that for a long time, that firearm purchases from licensed and unlicensed dealers should require comprehensive background checks. We're also concerned about passing legislation banning the sale, transfer, manufacture, and importation of military-style assault weapons and high-capacity ammunition magazines. And finally, let's provide incentives for school districts to ensure that schools have all the necessary personnel to respond to the mental, physical, behavioral, developmental, and academic needs of all students. Let's roll the symptoms back. We're not going to address the symptoms. Let's roll it back to the root cause of aggressive behaviors. And let's make sure that schools have the trained personnel that they need to support teachers, to support administrators in actualizing that child to its full potential. Since 2013, there have been at least 166 school shootings in America, an average of nearly one a week. National PTA is committed to protecting students from gun and other types of violence. In addition to physical safety, National PTA is also committed to protecting students' digital safety. Josh?
Thanks, Shannon. And Shannon's right, especially in these last few years, again, moving into the 21st century and the large use of computers and the internet, this has definitely been an area that the National PTA has grown a lot in the policy issues. In fact, just a few months ago, we passed one of our position statements on student data privacy and security. And that, again, if you can go to our website and you can see under the advocacy toolbar, there is a section that says position statements and resolutions, and you can find it under there. So with over 70% of teachers assigning homework that requires access to broadband, more students are using the internet than ever before. However, while technology is helping students learn more effectively and communicate easier, there are some concerns that not all students have equal access to digital devices. A recent study showed that 92% of households with incomes between $100,000 and $150,000 have broadband service, or internet connectivity. But only 47% of the households with incomes below $25,000 have broadband. And that's a huge equity gap there of giving students all the resources and opportunities to succeed when you look at that number. 92% if you make over $100,000 a year as a family, and if you make under $25,000, you cut that number in half of how many students have opportunities to be online and to finish their homework, especially as more and more students are using the internet for homework. In addition, there are also concerns that student data privacy policies have not caught up with the times. Because of these concerns, the PTA is advocating for these certain areas. We want to ensure families are informed on the use of technology in schools and know their rights under federal law to protect their child's personal and educational information. Congress needs to modernize the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, also referred to as FERPA, and the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPA, to better protect students' educational records and the collection of information gathered online. National PTA wants Congress to address the emerging use of service providers who provide online educational resources and tools for children, families, and schools, and to ensure that there are adequate parameters around the collection, storage, security, and destruction of a child or student's personal identifiable information, including their educational records. We'd like them to provide guidance and resources to states and school districts to ensure all educators are provided the appropriate training to protect and secure student, teacher, and school data. And we would like to promote policies that increase access to digital devices and broadband to promote personalized learning. Not only do some students not have equal access to technology or information about their data, but many students do not have equal access to post-secondary opportunities either. And that's also a good segue into our post-secondary access and opportunity, is in the sense of how do you learn about it if you don't have the internet, you don't have these resources that we use nowadays. And as everyone knows, looking for colleges and looking up information and how to do things, everyone Googles it. But what if you don't have that opportunity to do that? And Shannon will cover the post-secondary access.
Yeah, you're so right, Josh. So my oldest is a sophomore in college right now, and we did everything online. She went through the College Board to do the universal application. She researched scholarships. She networked. She got prepared for orientation and her freshman experience, all online. She met people that were going to be in her dorm that were attending the university from the same geographic location as herself before she got there. These are all supports that helped her get through that freshman year, that made her feel welcome, made her feel safe, made her feel successful, that made her feel legitimate at the university. And our students that don't have access to the internet and that aren't internet savvy, because that's a skill set in itself that's born from being able to play on the internet. Yes, to have tasks to do through the internet, but definitely your ability to play and explore and take risks with technology. These are all very important things, and for students that aren't savvy, they're missing out on opportunities. They're missing out on enough opportunities to create a great inequity. The gap difference between children from high and low income families is growing in college entry, persistence, retention, and graduation. College tuition and fees has increased by over 500% since the 1980s, and this is outpacing healthcare costs. It's outpacing inflation. And National PTA confronts this lack of access to post-secondary opportunities by urging policymakers to support legislation that assists students' secondary school completion and post-secondary enrollment by providing advanced coursework, dual and concurrent enrollment opportunities, and academic and financial aid services. That being said, we can't just stop at increasing financial aid services. We did see an uptick in Pell Grant awards over the past few years, but what happened? Tuition cost increases matched those Pell Grant increases. We've got to be vigilant with this, and we can't just accept increases and not watch the full picture. We need to encourage greater collaboration between students, schools, and families to increase access to and support of post-secondary opportunities for students. We need to promote policies to improve college affordability, simplify the application process for all forms of financial aid, and expand access to in-state tuition. From early childhood to post-secondary education, these are our bookends. National PTA continues to be one of the most powerful voices in education advocacy. You are a part of that. So moving the needle forward, what can you do to help PTA continue our proud legacy of advocating for every child through one voice? Josh?
So as everyone knows, as PTA members, our mission is to make every child's potential a reality. And we do that by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. And everyone is able to support PTA's mission and get involved at any level of government for students and their families. I think before talking about this slide and seeing these three easy steps that you can do on your screen to get involved and be active is to realize that all of you on the call and PTA members in general are experts. You have children, or you work in schools, or your children are out of school, but they were at one time. You all know what goes on in that situation, or have heard from friends, families, relatives, and all those types of things as well. This public policy agenda is fantastic for quick bullet points and to look at the policies, and of course, use your government affairs department at the National PTA to help you with the legislation number or the title or who's supporting what or how do you contact someone. But in general, this information is your passion. You've seen it firsthand. So again, that most off what you could be doing as a PTA member is taking this information and making it public. Telling your local PTAs, going to the State House, going to your local mayor, and telling them that these are the changes we need to see. This is what we need to see in our schools. So to stay up to date on this type of information, one thing you can do is sign up to receive National PTA's monthly Takes Action newsletter. It goes out right around the first day of each month. It's a quick 1 to 2 sentence summaries of different legislation or policy points or something else that's going on at the federal level that you can easily use and share with others, or quickly shoot off an email to your congressman if you like something or if you don't like something. The other way is you can view our new and improved Takes Action webpage and send letters to your members of Congress through our Action Center. And you can also view our old letters to Congress and what National PTA has been supporting for all different issues. And in fact, if you go on pta.org/advocacy and you click on letters to policymakers, you can see that we organize it based on the issue. So if you're really passionate about school nutrition, then you can look under school nutrition and see what we've been working on, or juvenile justice, or federal spending in education. And when in the part of taking action, we have switched over to Voter Voice, and Lindsay Kabatsky, our government affairs coordinator, has done a great job of explaining to everyone the work and how we use the new Takes Action Center. And this Takes Action Center not only sends letters to Congress on your behalf after you type in your information and press send, it also, you can tweet at your congressman, you can Facebook your congressman, all of these things in the 21st century that are really quick. And it's already supplemented in there, the actual text. So it takes no work but to just post it online and have all of your friends repost you. And to that mention alone, I know that Shannon covered this a little bit earlier, but there is an action alert that just went out today to tell your member of Congress to fund statewide family engagement centers in fiscal year 2017. So once again, our main ask, this is what we're working on at LegCon and up for the upcoming months, we're going to be focused on this. And we have our Takes Action alert out that, tell everyone, tell your neighbor to just go onto our website. You just type in your name, type in your address. It shoots out your senators and congressmen, and then you just press send. And the letter goes through and the reasons why, and you can read about why this is important, exactly why we discussed it today. And I do want to give a hats off to our PTA members out there. This action alert has only been up for 5 hours, and we already have over 100 people that have taken on it.
That's outstanding. Sorry, Josh, I was a little exuberant there.
Well, that's what we do on these webinars. It's the excitement. That's why we're on them. So thank you, Shannon. I didn't scream, but I felt it. And the last thing is, to contact your member of Congress. We have all of these ways. We're sending out action newsletters to explain things. We have our Action Center, which, again, I've just discussed in length about all the functions through it. It's really easy to get in contact with all members of Congress, including even at your state level. And Voter Voice offer the state level options to reach them out, or you can just go online and Google your state representative. And all of these issues are very imperative. They're very important, and it affects all communities and schools. So just keep in contact with members of Congress and be in their inbox and be on their phone lines, because that's how we find change, is the more people that are doing this, and it's not just a few voices, It's every child, one voice.
Thank you, Josh. So before we move into the last segment, I just want to recap a little bit, because we have a public policy agenda, and man, it's sexy. And we have a stellar government affairs crew, and man, I gotta say it, they're sexy too. But let's talk about you all on the call. Let's talk about our FLCs, our state presidents, and all of our stakeholders. I want you folks to recognize your role, not only in the association, but in America. I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. You're advocating for family engagement. You're advocating for equal education opportunities. But when it comes down to it, what you're advocating for is social change, because education will deliver every child to new opportunity. It is the grand equalizer. And it couldn't be any bigger than that. So thank you for being on the call. Always contact me individually if you have questions, or the legislative committee or the staff. We are in this to our necks. We are completely invested in this process. We believe in you. We believe in PTA, and we are super excited for the event that's coming up. So let's open it up for questions.
Yeah, so this is Lindsay Kabatsky again, the National PTA Government Affairs Coordinator. The first question is, with respect to the public policy agenda, will attendees at LegCon be lobbying for the entire agenda, or will it be, a specific focus this year?
So if you don't mind, Shane, I'll take the first question.
Sure.
So that's a fantastic question. So this year, we like to make sure that we're very strategic in the way that we advocate as a group, and that we use this our limited Hill time and our 1 day a year to that we're all together at one point to really get the most bang for our buck. And so our main priority and our main focus is to fund statewide family engagement centers, because it is a very large uphill battle. We've all worked hard together, and everyone has put in hours and emails and phone calls nationwide to get it included in the bill, but now we need to fund it. It's great that it's in the bill, but now we need to put money into actually doing that. So and it hasn't been done since 2010. So again, we're looking at we're looking back in time and what happened in these last 6 years. So that's our main ask from everyone, is to start off with that and be really strong about that one individual point. Now from there, absolutely, you can bring up the other issues affecting your school district or your state. You can talk with your group in those Hill meetings and see what issues each of you is passionate about. I don't think you'll have enough time to cover all the issues, but absolutely, you can focus in on a few of them and start discussing them.
Yeah, great, Josh. And then I guess this is probably for you, Shannon. By post-secondary access and opportunities, do we just mean college, or do we mean other opportunities as well?
Oh, that's a great question. And that's wonderful, because it can let me showcase some of the work that the Legislative Committee is doing right now. So we have a seat on the SAY Committee with the United States Army, which is supporting every youth. And what we're looking at is creating a toolkit for post-secondary experience. So that would encompass undergraduate degrees. It would encompass vocational training. It would encompass career readiness in terms of like getting your resume ready and those types of activities, but also public service. And so what does public service look like? Well, that can be military service, but that can also be the Peace Corps. And so we would like to kind of have this holistic approach to what our youth can engage in when they leave our high schools, because we need all of our youth. We don't just need the ones who are going to successfully obtain an undergraduate degree. Half of the people that obtained an undergraduate degree with me, I wouldn't even loan them money. So, we need all of us, and we need all of us to do our part. And I can take my family as an example. My oldest is a sophomore at Texas Christian University. and she will commission as an Army captain when she graduates in 2 years. She's all about public service, and hoorah to her. My middle daughter, I was telling Lindsay and Josh, she's both the smartest and the nicest member of our family. And she's going into engineering. The child is just gifted with the math and the science and I mean, she just built a catapult system the other day for AP Physics. It's mind-blowing. My third daughter, she's 15. I think she's going to be a welder. So I have full appreciation for, National PTA has full appreciation for the individuality of our students and how we need to support every student so that they can actualize to their full potential. So absolutely, I'm not sure who asked that question. Great question, but we are approaching it in a holistic way.
Great, and I think that's probably all the time we have for questions. So Shannon, do you want to talk a little bit about our legislative conference coming up?
I just want to say I hope everyone comes ready because it's going to be the best event ever. Like, we're going to be high-fiving and hugging it out by the end of it. We're going to be super successful. All the momentum that we built with our pushes on family engagement and ESSA, we're just going to build on that momentum and really have a large presence on the Hill. You're going to get some great training. Real excited to say that we'll have the NBC education correspondent, Rahima Willis, as well as many other impressive guest speakers. This is really a time where we bring in subject matter experts and professionals as a way to professionally develop our advocates. So it's not volunteer to volunteer so much as that higher order professional development of our state-level policymakers, our movers and our shakers. I'm so excited to spend time with you folks, and I have a small request. If you run into a committee member, alleged committee member, they're like, in my estimation, and I don't want to say anything against anyone else, but they're like the Elvis of National PTA because they are truly the hardest working committee. They are just wonderful. Please thank them. Your government affairs and communications staff members, actually, you see a National PTA staff member at this event, please take time to thank them because they are really pulling out all the stops. They're carrying their normal workload and getting us prepared for this special event. And if you look back a year, we have really rebuilt and retooled, and I'm so very proud to be a part of this team. So I look forward to seeing you at the conference on March 8th.
Great, and Josh can talk a little bit about our next webinar.
Great, yes, so we have, it's up on your screen. It's our fourth and final webinar for the LegCon webinar series, and it will be on March 1st at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope that if, for those of you that are planning to attend LegCon, this is a must-see webinar as it will help you to hold successful Hill meetings, the do's and don'ts, as well as navigating DC and what's around you. And I will be presenting this webinar along with my colleague Jackie Ball, the Director of the Government Affairs Department, and one of your fellow PTA members, Mike Sullivan, the Federal Legislative Chair for Colorado PTA, will also be on the webinar to explain his success story of last year's LegCon and how he was able to advocate and make a difference. So please plan to join us for our last webinar of the series.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, and we hope you have a great evening, and please follow us on all these social media websites. So thank you, and good night.